Hey, I'm Paul Levinson, and welcome to Light On, Light Through, episode 103, a conversation with Linda Kaplan Thaler. I had this conversation just yesterday in Linda's offices in busy, bustling Midtown Manhattan. But Linda and I go back a long, long way. In fact, back in the late 1960s, we wrote a whole bunch of songs. One of them, Not Yet Ready to Say Goodbye, appears on the Twice Upon a Rhyme album. You've heard me talk a lot about that album. It was released back in 1972. It's been reissued by a bunch of sage record companies in the last few years. Linda and I co-wrote that song. So that's one of the songs that you'll hear on this podcast. But anyway, in addition to that song, you'll hear several other songs that Linda and I wrote. And Linda has gone on to have an extraordinary career. She, in 1983, for example, wrote the Toys R Us commercial. I'm a Toys R Us kid. I don't want to grow up. That was written by Linda Kaplan, became a huge success. Linda went on to create her own advertising company, Kaplan Thaler, and among the many things that that company has done is it put together the Aflac Duck commercial and many other commercial campaigns as well. And Linda has also worked in politics. She worked on Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential campaign and on Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. And in addition to all that, Linda is a best-selling author. She's co-authored 4 books, probably the best known of which is The Power of Nice. That's some good advice. And her most recent book just came out a few weeks ago. It's called Grit to Great. So you're going to hear us talking about all that and much more in the interview, which starts right now. So let's begin at the very beginning. I'm trying to remember exactly how you and I came into contact. You were friends with Tina, who was then my girlfriend, who later became my wife and still is. Is that what it was?
Wait a second. Is that how I got to know you? Through Tina? I think so. I can't remember how we met.
I know, me neither. Is that amazing? Well, I think I have Tina had something to do with it.
Did Tina go to City College?
Yes.
Oh, then I knew her through City College. Okay,
yeah.
Yes.
What high school did you go to?
Bronx Science.
Okay, well, you might have known Tina from that, but you might have been like one class.
Okay, we won't say when we graduated because that will date ourselves.
Right.
Okay, yes.
So anyway,
I remember, by the way, you hadn't married her yet,
right?
But you used to tell me all the time how much in love you were, and you were so attracted to her and everything. And now you have grandchildren?
Not quite.
Not quite. Almost grandchildren. Okay.
They're working on it.
They're working on it. Okay.
But yeah, as a matter of fact, I'll have to make sure Tina hears that because it's proof that I said that back then.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad you said that. That'll get me, in good shape for at least a couple of
months. Yeah.
But all right, so were you writing songs before you and I got to know each other, or did you start writing songs right around that time? We're talking about, I guess, the mid to late 60s, right? Like 67?
Yeah. I was writing very, very, very bad songs.
I'm sure they were good songs.
The first song I remember writing, I can't believe it, because of course it had 3 chords, was There Once Was a King, and I wrote it when I was at Bronx Science. And
that's sweet.
There once was a king, there once was a queen, there once was somebody. It was a stupid song, but I had 3-part harmony, and my 2 very good friends, or 3 friends, I had these 3 friends in high school, and we recorded it on a Wallensack tape recorder. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, and we played it for the talent show, and then, about 10 years ago, one of my friends said to me, "You're not going to believe what I found when I was digging in my closet." She actually found the Wallensack tape and played it.
That's great.
And I could tell, how they say personalities never change? It wasn't so much the song, which was really awful, but I would stop every 10 seconds and go, okay, you're not singing the harmony right, and you have to do this a little louder. And then my other friend would say, you know what, I really don't want to do this anymore because like we've been doing this for an hour. And the other friend would like, whatever you want to do is fine with me. It's like those were our personalities. They were shaped, and I was of maybe 13 years old, but I was like, there's me, the type A personality, obsessive. Yeah. There's my other friend who's like, you know, I want to put up with this stuff. And then the other friend, the good-natured one, who's still the same way, you know.
Well, actually, it's no surprise then that you and I got along so well, because I was exactly the same way.
Yes.
I was like a little dictator. I had my groups. I told everyone. In fact, I also dug up an old tape, a guy by the name of Paul Gorman. I don't think you ever met him. I knew him since we were like in first grade, actually. But when we were in high school, we were like singing together, and we were doing like our renditions of "I Only Want You" by the Passions. I only want you, with all kinds of harmony. Yeah. But I remember very clearly driving those poor guys crazy because hey, Dennis, you're like a little flat. You know, you got to do it over again and stuff like that. So you and I would definitely have the same.
Well, do you remember that Ellie Greenwich?
Yes.
I was in the studio singing some song that we wrote together. Was it Skyscraper?
Well, it was either Skyscraper or A Piece of the Rainbow.
And it was on Buddha Records. It was on a little, not 45, I think it was.
Did Skyscraper get on Buddha Records? I don't remember that.
One of the songs that we had written was on Buddha Records because I remember it said Buddha Records, and she didn't end up signing us.
Right.
Or she didn't sign me, I know, because I wasn't that good.
No, you were very good.
But she was not. She had written "It's My Party, You Don't Cry With Her."
She was
Going to the Chapel.
Yes, she basically was married to Jeff Barry for many years, and they wrote a lot of hit songs, including even. I guess it was Jeff Barry and Ellie Grant who wrote some early Monkees songs. But the two of them before that wrote They Do Round Round.
Yeah, Do Round Round.
They worked with Phil Spector for a while.
Sure.
And what happened was right around the time that you and I were writing songs, Stu Nedickman, Ira, and I were in a group called The New Outlook. We were singing in Central Park one Sunday afternoon, and these two people walked up to us. One of them was Ellie Greenwich. And that's how I met Ellie Greenwich.
Oh, okay,
and she was really very nice.
She was,
and her partner, Mike Rashkow, who's still around, not quite as nice as...
Is Ellie Greenwich still around?
No, she isn't.
She passed away?
She passed away about 7 or 8 years ago.
She's so talented.
She came back in the early 90s. She had a huge hit on Broadway for a while, where she was actually even performing for a while, but they were doing all her songs, the kind of thing that they have now for Carole King or the Four Seasons, Jersey Boys. So Ellie Greenwich actually pioneered that in the early 90s.
Carole King actually sang backup on something that my husband Fred Thaler recorded because her daughter, who was the producer of Beautiful, used to work with Fred.
That's amazing.
Sherry,
Yeah. And the Four Seasons actually sang a song about her. Sherry.
That wasn't about her.
No,
okay.
It could have been.
No, but so we started writing songs together.
We started writing songs together. I think Skyscraper was the first song.
Yeah, and I wrote the music and you wrote the lyrics.
That's
and the lyrics were fabulous.
Yeah, well, the music is fabulous. And on the podcast, we'll play the song so everybody can hear it. I love hearing it. As a matter of fact, I dug it out of some old, digital file.
Yeah.
I discovered it a couple of weeks ago. And there's some kind of publishing company called Skyscraper books. So I sat to them and they said, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful." So
this is like recently?
Yeah, like
so
a week
funny.
or two ago.
Skyscraper nestled in the quiet vapor of the clouds above the crowds that teem and dream below you. Skyscraper set against the pastel paper of the sky. I wish that I could see those colors glow too. Wonder what you see looking down at me. Wonder who I am. Wonder who I'll be. Skyscraper dressed up in the sparkling drapery of night. It's always bright outside for always new. Wonder what you see looking down at me. Wonder who I am. Wonder who I'll be. Skyscraper nestled in the quiet vapor of the clouds above the crowds that teem and dream below.
Japan, by the way?
Yes, I am. It just goes to show you, because I love Japanese food. But yes,
That's the reason. Yeah.
I'm bigger in Japan than I am here. That's like a whole story in itself. In 2002, there was a magazine, there still is actually, called Record Collectors Magazine, not a particularly inspiring title, but for a magazine, they devoted a whole issue to lost cult classics, and they included my album Twice Upon a Rhyme.
Way to go!
The only thing that was true, though, about it was lost. I don't think it was by no means a classic. I don't know if it was cult or whatever.
But you never know. That's what happens with those things. Yeah, that's so funny. Well, I played. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is I played the Skyscraper. I played it for Fred.
Yes.
And I have to go through the whole album. I was wondering the way that you could single it out so that I could put it on send it out, because I want to do Throwback Thursdays.
Yes. I'm going to, the email that I sent you yesterday has like 4 MP3s, so each song that we wrote together or you sang is in a separate MP3.
Oh, great. Okay.
So you can use
That's going to be my Throwback Thursday in a couple of days.
Good. Well, I love that song. We also wrote Not Yet Ready to Say Goodbye.
Although not yet ready to say goodbye, sure gonna miss you, just won't get by.
Goodbye, don't make it, we can't forsake it, we're not yet ready to say goodbye. Things been getting worse lately. I've been loving in reverse lately. Almost time to say where I will. Since from here the road is over. Don't you believe it, girl? So still. Hey, we're not ready to say goodbye. Don't miss you, we'll get by. Goodbye, don't make it. We can't forsake it. We're not yet ready to say goodbye. Well, life's been down on us lately. Been causing quite a fuss lately. Breaking up wouldn't be the solution, but the treatment would be manageable. But at the end of feeling quite sure. Hey, we're not yet ready to say goodbye, so I'm gonna miss you. Just won't get by. Goodbye, don't make it. We can't forsake it. We're not yet ready to say goodbye. Can't say so long. It's been so long. Can't say that's all, 'cause that's all wrong. That's all wrong. Hey, we're not yet ready to say goodbye. No, can't get by without you, baby. We can't forsake it. We're not yet ready to say goodbye. Goodbye. Say goodbye. Not yet ready to say goodbye.
I love it.
So that was on the Twice Upon a Rhyme album.
Yeah.
That's one of the songs that the people in Japan really like. I'm
my
serious.
goodness.
That's what they always say. Hey, this is
Well,
a
they
great
never want to
song.
say goodbye.
That's right.
They're very,
sweet people.
very, very, very together people.
That's
yes, right.
We also wrote a song called
Living in those paper houses. They're just used to being with each other.
Sound is very important when you live in a paper house.
Yes.
Because you can hear what goes on.
Well, that's what they
next
say.
door.
That the Japanese are very good at internalizing.
That's right.
Because they're constantly hearing people chatter, and so they can tune everybody out.
That's
something
right.
which I can't do.
Me neither. We don't live in paper houses, but I'm constantly annoyed by my boisterous neighbors mowing the lawn, stuff like that. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I know. What are you going to do?
You have to be like a multi-millionaire and get a house someplace on an island where there's no one around.
Exactly.
And even then...
But then who would help clean the island?
That's true.
You know.
Probably.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yes.
all right. We also wrote a song called "A Piece of the Rainbow." You should listen to it. It's a really beautiful song. I wrote the, you wrote the music. It's sort of like a little
Piece
allegory.
of the rainbow.
Fell to the ground and burst into colors.
A piece of the rainbow fell to the ground picked up a piece of the rainbow, a pretty little star. I put you in a jar so I could watch you grow. And I brought home a piece of the rainbow. Enchanted little elf, I put you on my shelf and hoped that you would grow. And I watched you every day, and you slowly turned to gray, gray. And I picked up my piece of the rainbow and tossed you back to the sky and waved a last goodbye. I had to let you go. I had to let you
But you wrote such, your lyrics were so, when I played for I was playing some of this for my husband, and I was like, I just don't, those lyrics were just very you, and,
Well, thank you, but the music was very you, too. You had like an unbelievable sweetness and melodic quality.
Well, maybe that helped me when I eventually wrote the Toys R Us song.
Well, that's what I want to get to.
Oh,
So,
okay.
all right, so we finished. We wrote. We may have written 5 or 6 or 7 songs. I don't really even remember. You also did a very nice recording of a song that I wrote with our guitarist Peter Rosenthal called "Cloudy Sunday," and I'm going to play that as well.
Oh, okay.
You didn't write that, but you really sound beautiful.
Really, I don't have any recollection
we put
of it.
on "Cloudy Sunday."
Okay, that was
we had,
nice of me to do that.
Congas in the background.
Okay.
And all kinds of good stuff.
Cloudy Sunday, I wake to find you gone. Cloudy Sunday, the bed I sleep upon is strangely smooth and white, touched only by me and the empty night. Cloudy Sunday, a fog upon my brain. Cloudy Sunday condenses into rain and tears begin to swell. But you couldn't tell that I loved you well. So we loved each other in passing, but I'll keep searching for something more lasting, like the poet looking for the once in a lifetime Cloudy Sunday, I glimpse a distant form. Cloudy Sunday, I sense that he is warm, but question what I feel. Reflection of me or something more real. Cloudy Sunday.
Okay, so that was like the late 60s, maybe
60s, early
70s.
70s, yeah. when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was actually started so young.
I know that.
And you were only about 6 at the time.
That's right.
Yes.
We were
prodigies. Child prodigies. Yes.
Somehow I got over to your house, even though I was 6 years old.
Your mother just let you on the bike. You went on the bicycle.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Confidence.
Training wheels. Yeah.
I have a recollection that and I think it was like 1974. This is like the next time you and I did something together.
That's when I was in Stop the World, I Want to Get Off touring company. Yes.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Because I was, at that point, I had dropped out of City College. I couldn't take it, and I was just doing my music, but I went back to New York University.
You did?
I eventually got a PhD at New York University, but in
My daughter's at
1974...
NYU now.
Yes, well, it's a good school.
Which school did you go to?
Well, I got the PhD in the School of Health, Education, and Nursing Professions.
Okay.
But I got my BA just in the Washington Square College, whatever that's called.
Okay,
now.
yeah.
Not Gallatin. It didn't exist. That didn't
Yeah,
exist.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like their straight, normal school.
Yeah.
Even though I was the complete antithesis of normal.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I was doing a television show. I don't know if you remember this. That's part of one of the courses I was taking in television production. And I was doing a complete show, and I had this idea, I'll invite Linda down to sing some of her songs, some of our songs, and you did come down.
Really? I have no recollection of that.
Yeah, and unfortunately...
But I don't know what I had for breakfast, so don't
there's
take
a
it
tape
personally.
of that somewhere. And again, you know how these tapes are, it'll emerge somewhere. There's an old, I don't know if it's a reel-to-reel tape, a cassette tape, but a big one. So that was maybe the mid-'70s.
Okay.
And then... Sadly, it was my fault completely. You and I fell completely out of touch, right? I mean...
We didn't have a fight or anything.
No, we didn't have a fight.
By the way, you know what I was doing at the time also? I did the first variety TV show with my little comedy troupe, the Ed Sullivan Memorial Review, for Cable Access D. If you remember, there was Cable Access C and D. If I had really been good, we would have been on A, but I don't think that existed. and I always kid around, say that we had a huge following. His name was Dave,
right?
And he followed us like every good cameraman should. But honestly, we that was the first sort of comedy variety show on Cable Access in the New York area, and we had we did have a little bit of following. People would kind of but that's what I was doing.
Because I also remember, come to think of it, a few years earlier, seeing you. It was probably a college production. Playing Adeline and Guys and Dolls. I remember, Tom develops a code.
A Python can develop a bad cold.
That's right, you were great. Maybe you Kiss Me Kate also at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So you were really fabulous back then as well. But no, we didn't have a falling out. It's just this is what happens with people. They go their own ways. And one of the things about social media, which I love, is how I'm able to get back in touch with people. I mean, there's one guy, Joel Iskowitz, is another story in itself. He and I were like great friends in 5th and 6th grade. And then we were out of touch for, God knows, 45 years. Yeah. Now I have him doing covers for my books. He's like a world-renowned artist.
Yeah.
He always had some visual talent.
That's great. That's great.
So I love
it's like my husband went to music and art and on the basketball team with Bobby Mankoff.
Okay.
Bobby Mankoff, they picked up their friendship a few years ago. He is the editor of the cartoons for The New Yorker. He's very famous and has done thousands of cartoons for them. But and he's actually in our new book, Rit to Great. I interviewed him.
Excellent. All right, so now tell me about Toys R Us. Because I heard it and loved it. I had no idea it was you. This was like the mid-'80s because we were totally out of touch.
That's right.
It was all over the place. It was, it was like on a bazillion commercials on television.
Right. So how did you know that I wrote it?
I didn't know that you wrote it. I didn't find out that you wrote it until maybe, that was like, 1985?
It's probably 1983.
Yeah. I don't think I found out until you and I got back in contact, maybe 2004,
That's right, when we all got together and had dinner. Well, that's so interesting. Yeah. Well, no, I was at J. Walter. I decided I liked eating more than acting, and so I got a job at J. Walter Thompson, and one of the accounts, and all I wanted to do was write jingles. I mean, I actually wanted to work for a jingle company, but it was very hard to get those jobs, and so I figured, all right, I'll become a copywriter, and I had been doing my comedy thing and some off-Broadway stuff, but really making very, very little money. So my father told me about this guy who was at Gray Advertising, and maybe I put a book together, and then I did get a job writing on Kodak and Burger King and whatever, and we were at J. Walter Thompson, and we were pitching, and whatever I worked on, I would write a jingle for it.
Right.
And it always got rejected. And
story of my life.
It's the story of my life, too. And so we were pitching the Toys R Us account, And Jim Patterson, my boss, now famous world-selling author James Patterson, who's also in our book, Rich and Great, and my art director at the time, Dina Vesey, came up with this great line, I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. And I said, excuse me, that has to be a jingle so that kids will sing it, and they'll bother their parents because you could buy a Barbie anywhere, so you want to buy it here, and you'll never grow up, and you'll, you know. All right. So we invited all these people to do demos for us, and the guy who wrote, what's his name? Famous. The guy who wrote Annie, Charles Strauss. Everybody was doing demos, and we didn't like any of them. So I was playing for my art director. I said, I sort of was fooling around on this toy piano, and I kind of wrote this song. And, of course, everything I write comes out like a Broadway tune. So, I want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. I said, but it sucks, it's terrible. So my art director at the time, Greg Weinschenker, a couple of days later, he said, you should really play that for the client. It's very catchy. I said, no, it's terrible, it's awful. Well, it may be awful, but I keep singing it. I can't get it out of my head, The word earworm had not been invented yet. So finally I play it for James Patterson, and he's like, okay, well, let's play for the client because we don't like anything. And we were actually going to buy the rights to for Peter Pan, I Won't Grow Up. Mm-hmm. I won't grow up, I won't grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid, I'm a Toys R Us kid.
Your song's better.
Yeah, but they wanted $100,000, and that's why my song became better, because my song was free, because I worked for the agency. And so they tested it with little 5-year-old kids against the Peter Pan version. And I'm in Jim's office, and he's on the phone, and he says, well, you just wrote your first national jingle. The kids loved it. They don't know from Peter Pan. They were like 4 and 5 years old. Okay. So it goes on the air, and I'm still thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. And first week it's on the air, I hear a kid singing it on the street, and his mother saying to him, if you don't stop singing that friggin' song, you're going to miss the bus for school.
That's fabulous.
And then James Patterson said, you know what? I think this might actually catch on, because I was at Logan Airport and the waitress was singing your song. Mm-hmm. And it became, I think it's the longest running jingle in American history. Who knew? But that was my dream to write a kid's song.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's so significant when somebody who is not a member of your family, who's not a friend, who's not a colleague, just a complete stranger out there, you see them enjoying your work. I mean, it's funny you say Logan Airport, because for me, one of those moments, my first novel is So Code. I'm sitting in the Amtrak station, South Station, Boston. They have like a little book nook. I'm not even sure if it's there anymore. And they pretty much only have paperbacks. Yeah. And I see this woman pick out this book.
Your book?
Familiar, yeah. So then I'm thinking, oh my God, she's probably going to put it back. But no, she looks at it, she has a smile on her face, and she buys it. I had to control myself. I felt talking about big hugs. I felt like running up.
Did you say something to her?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you should have. What way is that to talk to your mother?
I don't
really.
Mom,
thank you so much.
I think I was stalking her. Like,
of course.
I didn't want to.
You don't want to jinx it.
Like basically fracture the
moment. Right.
But
see, do what I do. I go over to people and I go, I got to tell you, I don't know whether you're going to buy it or not, but that is just the best book out there.
Yeah, well, that's what you have
to do. And then you don't tell them that you wrote it.
No, I know. Right. That's one way of marketing.
Yeah.
People,
word of mouth. Just go to every bookstore there is.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like that feeling, right? Where someone out there in the world, I mean, that's like the ultimate gratification.
Yeah, it is.
And gratification for your work.
It doesn't get better than that. It really doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
So this was fabulous. This was 1983, and this was like hugely important. I mean, look, I'm a Toys R Us Kids is as big as You Deserve a Break Today. The McDonald's commercial. I mean, it's up there. If somebody were making a top 10 or even a top 5 of all time, or like Plop Plop Fizz Fizz Over the Relief It Is, I'm a Toys R Us Kid would be, right up there. So you really did it. I mean, that's really amazing.
Thank you. Well, I think that the other, there are some great moments that I've enjoyed. One is working on the campaign Kodak Moments, where I got to write a lot of music for that, and Burger King and Wendy's, which we do with Red, But I think probably the hallmark of what our agency created was probably the Aflac Duck.
Right, I was going to get to that. So 1983 is Toys R Us. So now what year is the Aflac Duck?
The Aflac Duck, he's about 15 years old now, I would say.
Okay.
And we were asked to pitch it only because our agency was very small at the time. The only reason we were asked to pitch it, I found out later, was that the guy who did the research for Aflac, his best friend, I had taken out to lunch to give him some advice on advertising 15 years prior, and said, "Oh, I heard this Linda Kaplan took me out to lunch once, so we should ask her to pitch."
Right.
I mean, the power of nice, right? So it became apparent with all the research that they gave us about the product and wanting to do this highly emotional advertising and making people cry, and we just had the audacity to say, putting the research aside, we said to the CEO, Dan Amos, a brilliant, wonderful, very intuitive kind of man, I said, "Dan, what actually keeps you up at night?" And he said, "Nobody can remember the name of my company. Even my relatives cannot remember the name of my company. It's hard to remember." So I said, "Well, that's what we're going to do. Forget about all this information." Right. It's like Woody Allen, 80% of life is showing up. I said, if nobody remembers your name. And so we're walking around and nobody in the agency could remember what we were pitching. They had 3% awareness 15 years ago. So finally, I kept screaming to everybody, the name of the company is Aflac. Aflac. Why is it so hard to remember? Aflac. So one of the art directors pinches my nose and he goes, "Could you say that one more time?" And I go, "Aflac." He said, I know this is crazy, but you sound like a duck quacking. And then the light bulb goes off, and it's like, that's it. The insurance salesman's going to be a quacking duck, and no one ever hears him, just like nobody ever hears anybody in our society. And he's not the underduck; he's the underduck.
He's not the underduck. He's not the underdog.
He's the underduck.
Right.
And it's classic. I mean, the sales rocketed. It was amazing.
It was extraordinary. Now, the last time we talked about this, which again was like maybe 2003, 2004, I said, "So when are you going to get Ben Affleck to..."
We tried.
Okay, and he's still saying no?
Well, you know what happened?
His career hasn't exactly soared since then.
No, but he did. He won, an Oscar for directing and all that. But no, actually, we kept thinking he was just one more bad movie away from doing the commercial because somebody, the writer of the Aflac advertising, Tom Amico, actually met him at an airport. And also he used to go on talk shows because Aflac, the advertising was so important. It became like a little banter. Right. They would say, "Oh, Ben Affleck," and he'd say, "Not to be confused with that Aflac Duck." And we said, "Come on, you got to do a commercial." We called him up, whatever. He said, "I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet." And then his career sadly took off, and so we lost that opportunity.
All right. Well, listen, I think you'll get it sooner or later.
Maybe, who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's fabulous. You've also done work in political campaigns.
Yes.
Tell us about that, and if you're doing anything currently.
So I worked on. Because of some of my very emotional work for Kodak and other brands, I was asked to work on Bill Clinton's presidential run in 1992. And I was asked to do the really emotional stuff, so I did his biographical commercial, and we used the footage of him shaking John F. Kennedy's hand, and it was great.
By the way, I wrote a short story about that called Transfer of Power.
Transfer of Power, right.
Because basically there's something almost magical that John F.
Well,
Kennedy
when I found that piece of footage, which they had been using for something else, I said, "Oh my goodness, that has to be the turning point. Do you mind if I say that was the turning point?" Because I had him narrate it. It was like, be my guest. So I said, that was the moment. And then I did something that he had not done before. I said, "I would like you to narrate your commercial because you have an incredible voice." And that was a big moment for me because I got this phone call going, the governor is so moved that him and Hillary have watched this now 15 times, that commercial. And then they were nice enough to, Bill Bradley called me. I worked on his campaign in 2000. And then Hillary's team called me for the 2008 run, and she was amazing. The two of them are two of the most brilliant people you could ever meet, and when you meet them in person, photographic memories, unbelievable knowledge base, don't use any cue cards, and so what can I say,
By the way,
Democrat and passionate.
Yeah, I love that about them. I never prepare any time for any lecture. I was once giving a lecture.
Is that true?
Yeah, I once gave a lecture in Minneapolis. I was paid a huge amount of money, really.
To talk about your books?
Media.
Yeah.
And I could just sort of tell that the people expect me to come, with some kind of like really well prepared
Yeah.
thing, but I don't do that. So instead, I walked up to the stage with a blank sheaf of papers, with just a cover thing with really nothing on it,
Just so that
just
they would
so
feel
they thought I
comfortable.
was carrying something up, and gave a talk for an hour, and everybody was saying, "My God, you didn't look once that you're prepared."
You know what? Colin
Speech.
Powell, Colin Powell also went to City College, and I've been fortunate enough to be on his board of the Colin Powell School, and I've been at numerous events with him. One in Washington, I was on a panel, and he was the keynote speaker, and he never ceases to amaze me. He uses no notes, and he also watches all the speakers beforehand, so he's always aware of what's going on and can reference it.
That's always good form.
But he's like brilliant. He's like hysterical. He's inspirational. He's informed. He's current. It blew me away. He just spoke for an hour, and he is truly the best public speaker I've ever seen in my life. But I do need some notes. I mean,
listen, whatever works for you.
Although I have to say, there have been occasions where I had to rip up what I did because the person before me either said exactly what I was going to say, and on those occasions,
What you do then is say, "This person said what I was going to say, but I'm going to say it better." No.
What I ended up doing is I ripped up what I had, and I was with somebody from the agency, and I freaked out, but then I had a glass of wine, and I just talked, and it was actually the best speech I ever gave. It was just me talking about life, and
it's like singing, I think, right? In other words, I guess there's some people when they sing, they may look at sheet music, but for the most part, you don't. I mean, you know it. It's
just
like
know
your
it.
brain is running the show.
Yeah.
So, let me ask the inevitable question: is there any connection between you and Hillary's campaign forthcoming in 2016?
No, I don't. Nothing so far. I'm cheerleading from afar.
Right. And you're cheerleading for Hillary, or
I'm cheerleading for. Well, I always cheerlead
for Joe Biden to come in.
I love Joe Biden. He's not running yet, and I love Hillary, and I've been fortunate enough to meet her enough times to sort of get to really know how genuine and passionate she is, and I wish I could just get up there and just say, you have to meet her in person. You just meet her in person, and it's completely transformative. And the Republicans are doing their show right now, and they're just piling on with her. And unfortunately, if Biden runs, they're going to do the same thing with him.
Right. Well, that's what they do.
Same of the game. Yeah.
They somehow managed to win. And sometimes not. I mean, they didn't win in 2000.
Right.
They lost the popular vote. They would have lost the Electoral College had the Supreme Court not, in my view, unconstitutionally intervened and stopped the recount in Florida. But that aside...
Thank you, Jeb Bush.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they do get a lot of votes, and it's amazing why anybody would vote for them. I mean, I understand why a really rich tycoon would vote for them, but they get votes from average people.
Yeah, they manage to convince people that they're, for the poor people, and that's quite debatable.
Maybe you should write a book about that. So let's get to your books.
Okay.
So in addition to all this, you were and probably still are a songwriter. You are an advertising exec. You do campaigns for commercial operations like Kodak, for political campaigns like Bill Clinton in 1996, and even Al Gore in 2000. Did you do something for Al Gore in 2000? No. I thought you...
No, I was working for Bill Bradley. Short-lived.
Okay.
Yeah.
Short-lived. Yeah. But in addition to all that, you find time to write how many books at this point? 8?
Well, I've co-written with the founder of our company, Kaplan Thaler Group, Robin Koval, who now has an amazing job at the Truth Initiative, which used to be formerly Legacy, fighting, smoking, and so she's saving a lot of lives. So this is our 4th book.
Okay. But you've written more than 4 books.
No, this is it.
Really? Because I see your name all over on books, but maybe I'm...
no, it's I write articles.
Tell us what the titles of the 4 books are.
Well, the first one is Bang, Getting Your Message Heard in a Noisy World, which was all about, it was more inside the beltway about marketing and sort of how to be intrusive and creative thinking and all that stuff.
That was about 2005 or so? It was published?
Yeah, around there, maybe a little bit earlier.
Okay.
And then the one that actually did the best, called The Power of Nice, How to Kill the Business World with Kindness.
Title.
Thank you. And
Donald Trump should read it.
Donald Trump has endorsed all our books, actually.
Really?
Yeah. because I was on The Apprentice, and he was actually very nice to me. Yes,
Yeah.
several years ago, he was very nice to me.
Well, it's interesting because I was actually quoted in a biography about Trump.
And so was I. And
Yes.
you know what? We talked about this when we
did?
had dinner, yes.
No kidding.
But we had put his wife, Melania, in a very funny Aflac commercial where it was a Frankenstein commercial,
Right.
and the brain of the Aflac duck became her, and the duck became her. I mean, it was
Okay.
hysterical. And actually, I've seen now... floating around on YouTube and CNN where they do little bios of her.
Right.
They
And
show
you
the
see-
clip of the
well,
Aflac
that's
commercial
right.
that she did.
I had a whole section in one of my books called "It's the New Afterlife," and it's an eternal
right.
afterlife. Anything that's been on any kind of video
That you've ever done.
Yeah, and not only that, it goes back to audio. You can get audio clips from like the early 1880s. The phonograph was invented in 1876.
Is that true?
Sure. You can hear, for example, Benjamin Harrison. The guy was president, I don't know, like 1880.
What a shelf life he ended up having.
Yeah, and you can hear him say, and he sounds terrible because, the quality is
Right.
poor.
Oh, I didn't even know you could do that. But
Yeah.
it's funny because when we changed offices and we had to purge a lot of stuff, and I was so adamant about getting everything on the digital hard drive and scanning stuff. And then one day I said, wait a second. And I picked up an article that was in Fortune magazine
Right.
that we were in. And I just Googled it. There it was. And I Googled my name, and there were everything that I had painstakingly said, we've got to transfer it. It's like all there,
It is all there.
Anyway, so we, so this
So Power of Nice.
Power of Nice did great, and Jay Leno, who I did not know but I knew was considered one of the nicest guys in show business. We asked somebody who did PR for him if maybe his assistant could give us a story, and the next day calls up my assistant Fran and says, "Hi, this is Jay Leno. Somebody
That's
wanted to know."
great.
Yeah, he's such a great guy, and he
Yeah.
ended up writing for the foreword for our book. We should have renamed the book "Forward" by Jay Leno,
Yeah.
but they did very well, and then we did The Power of Small, why little things make all the difference,
Right.
and that was a joy to do. And this latest book I'm so passionate about because I feel like, to a large part, America has lost its grit. We had this whole self-esteem movement where we were telling our kids everybody's a winner and everybody's important, everybody's special, but you know what? They're not special. Nobody's special. The only way you really get ahead, it's not by your IQ. As a matter of fact, only 2% of people who are really born prodigies ever amount to anything.
Mm-hmm.
But 98% of successful people have what we call not the it factor, but the grit factor. Guts, resilience, initiative, and tenacity.
Right.
And so we tell some amazing stories. Colin Powell was a C- student. Michael Jordan did not even make his high school varsity basketball team. Steven Spielberg couldn't get into the first 3 times he applied to film school. The list goes on.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Well, that's extremely important. One of the things I always tell my students about, which is tragic but instructive, and there are lots of lessons in it. There was a book called The Confederacy of Dunces. It was a novel.
I was just talking about this last
Right.
night.
Okay. So, and you know what happened?
I know what happened.
Basically,
Gave up and committed suicide.
that's right. And because for
I
us,
can't believe I was just talking about this
We're
yesterday.
definitely on the same way.
And his mother found the book and she had it published.
That's
and it
right.
won
She
the
brought it
Pulitzer
to
Prize.
That's right.
And
So
a brilliant book.
A brilliant book. And so you talk about grit to great. In other words, look, you can't blame the publisher who turned it down for the guy committing
Well, you know what
suicide.
happened with Stephen King?
Right. He was turned down by X number of companies.
He wrote Carrie.
Right.
He was turned down by everybody.
Right.
He literally, and there was no copies made, he threw it in the garbage, and his wife, Tabitha, I forget what his wife's name
it's
is.
a good name for his wife. I hope
He
it is.
said, that's it, I'm never writing again. And she picked it, and he always credits her, she picked it up out of the garbage, and she said, I'll be damned, this is going to get published, it's a great book. And he said, nobody wants it. She said, somebody will want it. And he said, that's the only reason that I became a writer, she took it out of the garbage. So...
Yeah, well, that's so true of so many people.
Yeah.
The Beatles were turned down by 25 different record companies.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, imagine that, 25 different A&R people, and this is like, I want to hold your hand, she loves you. I don't know, it doesn't quite have a hook.
Well, J.K. Rowling, and you know what, we talk about in our book, the guy, James Dyson, who invented the Dyson vacuum cleaner, he worked for 15... Can you imagine waking up one day and said, I'm going to invent a better vacuum cleaner?
Yeah.
And 15 years later, he had 5,126 prototypes that sucked, or as I say, didn't suck. And before he came up with what he came up with, but all people see is this brilliant guy. They don't know this nut job that just did not give up. And so we want to tell people who are reading the book, don't give up. Go for it, you know?
Well, that's incredibly important advice. I'm going to recommend this book to all my students. Seriously.
Good.
And everybody that I talk to, because I agree with you completely. Look, Thomas Edison said that the success in being an inventor is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
And we talk about we do a little video that we show in a lot of, especially the colleges. We're doing a lot of college tours. Thomas Edison was told by his teachers that he was so addle-brained that he should probably be homeschooled, and that the only way he might make a living is by dint of his personality, because he had a nice personality. Right. But they thought he was an idiot.
Yeah.
And well, there you go.
Yeah. This gets back to the problem with traditional publishers, the problem with the educational system. Unfortunately, people who get into these decision-making levels, they themselves
they're
usually
fearful.
Not that talented.
And they're scared.
And they're scared. And
so they don't like anything
That's
new.
right. It's a safer thing to say no, because if everybody says no, then no one even knows who this person is.
That's right.
But if you take someone on
and it doesn't work out.
That's right.
Well, Jack Ma, of Alibaba, he had a really tough time even getting into college. And then when he graduated, he couldn't even get a job at KFC as a server.
Amazing.
I mean...
Yeah.
It just goes on and on and on.
It does go on and on. All right, so let's end this up. What's next for you? Do you have any plans?
Well, I'm going to take a nap.
Okay. That Thomas Edison would agree. Thomas Edison was preferably he took a nap every afternoon, regardless of what he was doing. There were pictures of him sleeping on a lawn outside somebody's house.
You're kidding.
I'm serious.
Yeah, well,
you can
probably better to do that in your own bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't want to get hit by lightning.
That's true.
Was that Thomas Edison? Who invented electricity? No, I'm thinking of
Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, I knew that.
Right.
I knew that. Actually, a very good friend of mine, Alan Zweibel, a brilliant comedy writer. He used to write for SNL, and he's written with...
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he has a book that came out the same day called Benjamin Franklin, Big Pain in My Ass. It's a kid's book. It's a really funny book. Anyway, so what's next is I want to tell the whole world that they have the potential for greatness, and that grit is humanity's great equalizer, because you don't have to be born with it. You don't have to have a really high IQ or great SAT scores or a silver spoon in your mouth or virtuoso talent. That most people who became great didn't have any of those things. And I hope that the book and the lessons and the stories in the book will inspire people to just push harder. Especially, we talk about the last chapter of Grit for Good, is using it for good purposes. Mm-hmm. That one person really can have a huge effect, and we tell those stories in the book, on changing the world.
Well, if even just one person reads this book and then goes on to do something great that changes the world,
it will have been worth it.
That will have been more than worth it.
That and 100,000 people actually buying it.
Absolutely.
No, just kidding.
Well, that's going to happen every day.
Thank you so much.
Well, listen, it was fabulous talking to you, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay.
The Light on Light Through podcast.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. If you want to get a copy of Grit to Great, it's for sale all over the place, but you can get a copy easily. You can find a copy, how to order a copy, on the lightonlightthrough.com webpage. There's a nice big picture of the book there. You click on that picture, it brings you right to Amazon. That's lightonlightthrough.com, lightonlightthrough.com. It's a good thing I can spell. Anyway, so you'll find a copy of that cover on that webpage. In addition to that, lots of other goodies on the webpage for this podcast episode. For example, you'll find a link to Tony DeSanto's demo of Not Yet Ready to Say Goodbye. That's the song written by Linda and me. That's on Twice Upon a Rhyme. But Tony also recorded a really cool demo of that, and there's a link to that on the webpage. And you'll find a link to a video of a concert that I did just this past August 15th in Ronkonkoma, New York, at a science fiction convention called LICon 2. And at that concert, you'll hear and see me and Peter Rosenthal, the original Twice Upon a Rhyme guitarist. You heard me talk briefly about Peter in the interview with Linda, because Peter and I wrote Cloudy Sunday, which Linda sang, and that's one of the songs you just heard in the podcast. So Peter and I and his son Bob put on a concert in August. You can watch the whole video of that on YouTube. The link is also on the Light On, Light Through webpage. And lots of other things you might find of interest on that webpage, including lyrics to all 4 of the songs that you heard in the podcast. So, I'll be back really soon with another episode of Light On, Light Through. We're going to end this with a word from our sponsor, namely me, talking about one of my science fiction novels. And I'll see you here soon. In the meantime, enjoy.
Athens, 2042 AD. She ripped the paper in half, then ripped the halves, then ripped what was left again into bits and pieces of history that could have been. Sierra Waters had read once that, years ago, it was thought that men made love for the thrill, while women made love for the sense of connection it gave them.
Curled Up with a Good Book says, Sierra Waters is sexy as hell. You can find out more about The Plot to Save Socrates by Paul Levinson at theplottosavesocrates.com.
Paul Levinson spilled code about an ancient biotech war raging on in secret for centuries.